Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Amani from Team R4S. We're going to have us a little podcast today. This will be our first podcast in a small series of R4S Podcasts. Me today, we're Corey and Trini. We're going to talk about a couple of things today.
Yo, this is Corey. You know me. I play Goku Black. Nothing special.
It's your boy Trini, aka Marcus Houston. We live on podcast.
All right, so we're just going to hit a couple of topics today about some things that we feel about the state of the game, a couple of the meta decks and how the meta is progressing, a few of the different experiences that we've had at some of the upcoming events, namely the RG events and the regional, and then what we expect out of these little new cards that are supposed to be coming out sometime in the near future and their mechanics. So the first thing we want to talk about is the state of the game. Now, fellas, how do you think the state of the game is going so far? What do you think is actually... How do you think the game is developing in Bandai's hands now? We've seen some of the new events come out. We've seen some of the cards created. We've seen some poorly designed cards. We've seen some excellent designs, and we've seen some in-betweens, a lot of in-betweens, actually. So what do you think the state of the game is? Do you think it will continue at the rate that it's currently going?
I mean, this game is kind of weird. It doesn't have a whole lot of absolutely garbage cards like a lot of other games, but it does have quite a few why would you ever make these cards, and it's getting to the point where I feel like this game, as far as in terms of like power creep, is progressing faster than pretty much any other game I've ever played actually at this point. But that's kind of expected from Bandai. They don't, I don't know, it never seems like we're ever in a stable condition with them.
I feel that I agree with what you're saying, Corey, about why would they create certain cards. I feel that from the current ARG events that we've been to, the player base is phenomenal. The turnout is always extremely good, but I just feel there are some cards that be like, WTF, why do you exist in this game?
Yeah, I think that there are some card designs that are incredible, and I think there are some card designs that do a lot in a game where there's really a couple of simple card choices that can define whether or not a game goes in your favor. And for that, some cards just make those card choices almost straightforward, obvious. Do it this way because this is obviously the way that this card was designed to work. Like Combo, for example. I think for just to take Combo for example, the way that Combo works on turn one, like when he attacks and you activate his effect and you take a life from yourself and then it becomes 15k double strike, and it's like in the opponent's mind, it's almost like if I'm at 8 life, I have to take this 2 damage. I can't fathom it making sense discarding 2 or 3 cards from my hand to block him. And so in that type of card's design, it's almost like, yo, I have to let this man hit me because nothing else makes sense. If I don't counter the attack, nothing else about this play makes sense. And I feel like that kind of power being held into a 1-drop, 1 mana, can be anywhere for any red card. There are a lot of cards that carry that type of power in their own right that just make those cards in themselves powerful. Then you add them into certain concepts, and then these decks really start to spiral out of control. But for the most part, I think that the game has been relatively balanced. Like, I don't feel like any particular deck has been way too powerful than another, or any specific card designed by itself, with the exception of maybe like the new Mecha Frieza. I think they really kind of went over the top with that one. I think that they could have really balanced that a few different ways. But this is not our first rodeo with Bandai. Obviously, we were in Naruto for a long time. We've had our share of State 2 Sasuke's and Tail Beast Bombs. And so, I mean, we've been around the block a few times with Bandai. They plant some words on some cards that you just don't understand when they're there. But I think that it's not going to harm the game state too much as a whole. We're still generating some pretty high turnouts at these events. And we're still generating some pretty healthy popularity in this game. So I think the state of the game is kind of healthy. It's developing well. It's going pretty good for the most part. For the few months it's been out, definitely, I think there's a lot of room for growth. I think they're growing pretty well too. All right, so next topic, and one of the bigger topics that we kind of touched on a little bit in that one here is going to be the state of the meta. And this is going to be a huge topic because right now it's almost pretty clearly defined what we consider to be the top decks right now. Looking from the regional experiences from the past two regionals and how quickly the meta has shifted with just the release of certain cards, and certain deck choices and just one or two card differences that literally change a deck in its entirety from competitive to to unplayable or vice versa. And with that, obviously, we're going to turn it over to Corey for a second. He's going to get into what he thinks are the top decks. We're pretty much all in agreement here at the circle, so we'll let it off to him. And with that, Corey, what you think about it?
I'm not sure about the top decks, but I know that for now the most popular decks are run down to Mecha Frieza, Vegeta, and Cell. And I mean, it's really couldn't get any clearer if you look at the pie chart that they showed of how many of each of those decks showed up ARG, with Frieza literally taking up like 20 to 25%. Like 50 something players was running Mecha Frieza for some reason, and then like right behind that, with a lot less, but not too much less, was Cell, and then behind that was Vegeta. And I mean, it's clear to see why they're very easy decks to get up, make good, and win with. So I get that level of popularity. So those are definitely what I consider to be top decks, quote unquote.
Now, capitalizing off of where Corey went here into these meta deck choices, namely in Mecha Frieza, because as I could state, both Vegeta and Cell came out a set or two sets ago, so they've kind of had a good space of time to really show their powers. But Mecha Frieza was a card that kind of dropped in maybe the week before the event, and then by the next week had occupied almost half of the top, all by itself. And this card, in its design, for those that don't know, essentially Mecha Frieza deals damage to itself to reduce the cost of extra cards. And if it reduces the cost of the extra card to below 1 to 0, essentially, you don't even have to have the energy requirement to play the card. That means that just about any extra card that costs 1 is free. And for those of us who know the game, even to a small degree, we can name cards off the top of our head that should never, ever, ever, ever be free. I mean, I could get 5 off the top of my head just immediately. Yeah, Sense of Being, Weese's Coercion. You got the Crusher Ball, Cold Bloodlust. You got Objection becomes a 1-man. It's free when you're flipped on the others. These are cards here that are kept in balance by their relative costs. When you have a card like Sense of Being that pays 1 energy and then untaps 2 energy, that then becomes 2 free energy, a permanent 5k boost. Then you have Weese's Coercion that becomes a negate on any attack and untapped energy for free. And these kind of things you could do from 0 energy and really spike up an entire turn's worth of defense for almost no effort whatsoever. Or an entire turn worth of play extension for almost no effort whatsoever. You combine that with the Mecha Frieza's ability to mesh into just about any color and pull any resources out, and then you really have a solid card, something that I think is very difficult to keep in balance. But even with the release of Mecha Frieza, the format has almost indefinitely shifted towards a more aggressive early game, mid game type of format, because most people are looking to pressure this leader as soon as they get the opportunity, because less life means less free extra cards. Less free extra cards means less potential counters, and they just don't have the room to comfortably play their larger, make their bigger 5 or 6 mana plays to fall into something like, I take a single damage for a Crusher Ball. I can't even predict accurately what's in my opponent's hand by their energy anymore. Usually when you see a yellow mana untap, you could assume, okay, well, he's got to have a Crusher Ball. I got 1 Crusher Ball I got to play through, so maybe a 6 mana tap out isn't a good play. But now, you can't even tell. No mana means 1 of 20 different extra cards can happen as soon as I drop this card. And that unplayability is extremely difficult to play around, and it makes the calm and the more experienced Mecha Frieza players able to play themselves out of almost anything. And the card holding that kind of power just easily defines it as a meta-changing card. So you put that into a format where you have Vegeta And we all know Vegeta has been holding his own for a very long time in this format, since set 1 into set 2, probably going to go into set 3, still holding its own for its ability to really generate good pressure and really deny its opponent resources at any phase in the game while keeping up by the ability to self-awaken. And when you combine that Vegeta's critical ability and you start to add in the newer, stronger critical cards like Super Saiyan Gohan and KO, alongside the original Assailant Vegetas, and then the leader himself, Combo or Further Destruction Champa here and there, and you really get the type of pressure that you need to keep up in a format where you're almost overwhelmed by the concept of summoning and attacking with a single character. Vegeta now can carry a whole deck on his own, we've seen, just by being the leader card that can't be countered. Because you can't Crush a Ball Vegeta, you can't Bloodlust Vegeta. You can just counter him on attack, and if you don't, you could be looking at a serious damage, a serious threat to your life. Trini, as far as I know, you have a lot of experience with playing Vegeta. You have a lot of experience with introducing the blue-green Vegeta theme, with really utilizing crits, knocking combo chompers early. I don't know how many times this man has combo chomp on me. It's almost to the point now I want to rip a chomper when I see it. It's aggravating, but it's still just as strong as I've always seen it. Trini, if you could just hit on that for us, and just what does that feel like when you open up with a Vegeta and you see a player with like any leader over here, and when you go swing Vegeta on critical and they go no count? How does that make you feel in your heart?
I'll be in my heart. I just remember the words REK, man. It's just, oh, I'm a prideful saying, let me just sleep.
Yeah.
And then you just proceed to, oh, you want to take that? Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to make that dual attack and just double strike and just take 2 prizes and call it a day. It's like, go ahead. You can do whatever you want on your turn. Come back. You're going to get double striked again. It's just going to be a ruthless aggression, and that's pretty much the mindset of most. Not most. A lot of Vegeta players, they pilot the deck differently. I know when I first got it, it was blue-green with the Broly engine back in set 1, and so it was more control, and like now you can do more aggressive plays. So it's just, the leader is a phenomenal leader. That's all I can really say about that.
Yeah, capitalizing a little on what Trini said here, one of these big things that he mentioned, a lot of people can really make use of Vegeta in many different forms. I mean, I've played him personally in mono blue, I've played him in blue green, I've used the blue red even, I've used the blue yellow, and there are just so many different ways that you can utilize Vegeta because of the versatility in his ability. His ability actually, in one way, fixes the problems in normal inconsistent decks by giving you those extra cards early and allowing you to fix up your curve if you happen to start off slow or you start off rough or too much in one color, not enough of the other. He fixes that curve early in the game while still delivering that smashing, threatening potential from just his own ability, denying your opponent resources. It's a two-sided coin. When your opponent is focused, fixated on dealing with Vegeta, while you are just basically trying to get yourself more card advantage, fix out a bad curve, and you play the poker face and they actually have no idea that what you're trying to do is fix a problem that you have in your hand. They just think that you're trying to apply more pressure. And it's really beautiful the way that it's designed because it's simple. It's literally take a life, gain critical. On the other side, take a life, gain critical. If I have 7 or more blue energy, gain power. It's just written into the card's design to be simple, but yet it goes so many different directions. So with that being said, I'd say that with Frieza being on one side and literally being the definition of defense, counterplay, control aspect, and the Vegeta taking a more aggressive approach to the format, if it were up to me now to say, I'd say Cell probably falls right in the middle. And that would mean that you could probably take an aggressive approach with Cell. You could even play the androids as a leader instead, take a green-red approach or something of that nature, and have a more aggressive early game that allows you to keep up in a format like this by giving consistent pressure and not worrying about the opponent benefiting from an early game push, because once their hand gets flooded up and they decide to flip over too soon and draw a handful of cards, Cell then punishes them by pulling their hand down to 3. I think, personally, in that card's design, I think Union Absorb is a fantastic mechanic design. The characteristic is absolutely flawless. However, I think that the design into the Perfect Force cell was a tad bit, just a tad bit extra. I don't think that it's too powerful per se, but I think that it does a lot for what it's worth. And a lot of people may argue that because it costs you so many specific cards for the combo to work, it may not be as big of a deal. But when you have to take into consideration that you must have an Android leader, you can only think Cell, who on the Awaken side draws you 2 cards a turn from his ability, or Android to Awaken at 6 and generate hand advantage starting from as soon as the first or second turn, drawing out of those potential dead cards that a Cell engine in your deck would flood your hand with. And it really maximizes the consistency. Corey, what are your thoughts on the Cell leader exactly? I know I've heard you say a couple of things about it, but like really break it down for us. How do you feel about the design of the Perfect Life Force himself?
I mean, removed from the meta as something that people use a lot. I honestly think the Cell is he's really stupid. Like, he's stupid good. To have a one side effect that is fierce but better, and then to be able to flip him over on turn 2 easily with something like TN, and then net advantage every single turn from there on, in a color that has all the hand control tools in the universe, it's obscene. And then to top it off, he has another effect on top of that. All right, I can pitch 2 of these cards that I filtered out of the deck that were useless to me and kill one of your guys. No requirements other than just I pitched 2 cards. I mean, he is an absurdly powerful leader on both ends. Like, he's really useful either way, and that kind of it's kind of hard to. It's one of those things where he's so good, it's hard to figure out why you would almost play another leader. And because of the way his effect works, he works perfectly even when you're not necessarily playing green. You could play him with any combination of colors, and it would work. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. Just so not being specific, I think, is what's really like amplifying his playability. He just says pick a card and put it under and feed it to the Cell, and then draw more cards. And any color can put a card under a Cell and draw more cards. Every color benefits from it. And then this format right now, we've seen in these recent winning decks, we've seen a lot of extra cards that are just going into the deck just to feed Cell. We've seen a lot of people really project the ability to generate hand advantage with combos like Mighty Mask. Normally a very strong combo, but now at this point, you're pulling one half of the combo for your 10k chunks, and you're pulling the other half, and it just has to be a go time. It could be used as an energy, but after that, it just feeds Cell 2 more cards, or becomes a free boost, whichever one you really need more. And then you have the normal issues that you would run into in a deck that are just completely like denied by Cell. Like, if you happen to draw too many extra cards, feed it to Cell. Turn them into extra cards out of your deck. If you happen to draw extra Cell cards, feed them to Cell. If you happen to draw off-color cards, feed them to Cell. And it just really, really amplifies an ability of a deck to maintain maximum consistency. I think that is a lot of power in a single leader. That's what probably keeps him afloat in the meta. You top that off with the ability to utilize Perfect Force Cell. And while it's not a necessary component of the Cell decks, it's definitely a great advantage to be unique to only Cell and Android 17 and 18. So definitely think that that's keeping him afloat in the meta game. Of course, with Frieza having access to free Cold Bloodlust, it's not exactly the easiest matchup for Cell, but even in that regard, I think Cell still stands pretty strong by having consistent resource regeneration, whereas Vegeta has consistent resource denial, whereas Frieza has a little bit of both. And that would pretty much sum it up for me, is what I would think why these would be our top leaders currently in this format. And so with that, we'll jump into the next topic, which they kind of just flow right into each other. Now that we have our top decks, let's just take a look at the recent regionals that we've had and the experiences that we've had at the regionals now that just kind of help further our opinions on the format and our opinions on how the game state is and our opinions on how these metas are forming and what these cards are really doing. So as we know, Corey here topped the first regional, the one in Connecticut. He hit top 16 playing Goku Black, a blue-green list that actually, as Corey would say, did not even really need Goku Black's ability, just kind of used it as for some extra ramp just so he could get stronger cards on board and play. Very unique design, definitely a different approach to Goku Black, and Corey definitely stepped out and took a risk where a lot of other people either didn't try it or tried it and failed it. As we can see, it was the only Goku Black deck of its kind. He was the only one to make it to the top 16 and to move to day 2. So Corey, what was your thoughts in that regional? You played a pretty solid 9 rounds in day 1 and went all the way up to the day 2. Like, how were you playing? What were your matchups like? How did you feel in that regional?
Well, honestly, I thought I would see more yellow at that point, but I actually didn't. I think I played Anthony Hernandez, had the only cell deck I played that day, I think. And I played yellow in the top 16 for top 8, and that was the only time that was that. And it was weird because a lot of the matchups were, it wasn't all control, it wasn't all aggro. I played one control player in like the first round. I played an aggro player the next round. And it just kept going back and forth, and the deck kind of had a weird feel to it where it kind of adjusted to whatever I was dealing with. I don't build my decks intentionally to be mid-range or control or aggressive. I build them off of the concept that I have in my head. And for my deck to have turned out as mid-range as it was kind of fascinating to play through, because I'll have situations where it's like, all right, well, you think you're rushing me. You got me down to 4. You think I'm probably going to try to hold my prizes. No, I'm just going to awaken, draw these 2 cards, and then, okay, I'm going to hit turn 6, and I'm going to blast you. And then that's what will happen. And I have other games where it's like, okay, well, you didn't want to attack me until I got to turn 6. Well, that's your mistake. Drop Goku Black, pick up 2. Drop Goku Black, pick up 2. Drop this guy, pick up untap 2. Swing out, untap. Drop Goku, God Break, swing out, game. And you'd have moments like that. It was very fun to play. There was a lot of good players there too, honestly. And even though I don't think I got the best players, I really do feel like even just in general, this is one of those games where even an average player can still mark a challenge for somebody. But yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about the regional.
All right. Well, that was Connecticut, and that was the very first of the regionals. And from there, we went into Orlando, where the format kind of flipped on its head with the introduction of Mecha Frieza, as we said. And then a lot of the decks that we saw were overperforming in one event, namely Cell, began to slow down in their consistency and the performance towards that event. We probably saw half of the Cell decks in the first top 16 of Connecticut in the top 16 at Orlando. And a lot of those slots were filled up with Mecha Freezes. So when we get into that now, it's hard to deny the power shift in the format now. And so going towards now, we have Vegas coming up. And as I've noticed, Vegas has capped, and it's been the only event so far in ARG to have capped twice for Dragon Ball Super's registration. If I remember correctly, Vegas is actually over 300 players registered. I didn't even know that was possible at first. But thanks to Jim and the ARG staff, they just keep opening slots because they understand that these games are just getting more consistently higher turnouts. And I think Vegas is probably going to be the meta-defining ARG between these next 3 months. Just about anything that was able to slide through in Connecticut or maybe slid through in Florida, maybe got ignored a little bit, is really going to be on the big screen on full blast when it comes to Vegas, because it's just going to have a sheer overwhelming quantity of people in comparison. We're talking at minimum an extra 50 to 70 players just in this one local venue here. And so I think that it's going to be really important that we're paying attention to the turnouts of this one here. It just may also be, the biggest tournament of the ARG season in these next 3 months, and that may pretty much set the standard for us going forward. And, following that, you have Richmond, you have North Carolina. We don't exactly know how those are going to go as well. But I'm making a pretty accurate prediction here that I don't think they'll be quite as large as Vegas is, even going forward from now. If everybody who went to Vegas was disappointed and decided they were going to try their luck at North Carolina, I still don't think that it would have a higher turnout. With that being said, we have a myriad of different deck possibilities that we've been through now, but Ben and I went ahead and drop a small teaser on us, and that's going to be our final topic on this particular podcast, which is going to be these new colorless cards that we've seen a little bit of on their website and a couple of posts on Facebook here and there, mentioning two unique little things about them. One of which is overwhelm, which I believe is a skill that allows you to what am I looking for? Remove from play, banish.
Banish.
Yeah, what card game is this? Banish. To take the cards out of your gosh, I'm wasting my card games. Out of your discard pile, drop area. Take the cards out of your drop area and send them to the warp, which we will, for the sake of this podcast, define as the remove from play zone.
But we can't because we have cards that remove from play. Particularly, Cooler does that.
And Gohan does that.
Yes, Cooler and Gohan remove cards from play. So I don't know whether they're the same thing or not, but they have
not. Just the Shadow Realm area.
Yeah, how about that, right?
Yeah.
So, as far as we know so far, until Bandai says otherwise, the warp area is its own unique area where we're taking some cards out and we're moving them over there for the use of these overwhelm abilities. Now, I think that these abilities, with their have dramatic effects on the playability of their cards. For example, the masked Bardock. I don't know why I said masked Sailor. We don't know who this man is. But the masked Bardock here, and with an interest, the standard energy cost of 5, it has an overwhelm of 1. Is that a 1? So did we just reduce the cost from 5 to 1? And I believe that we just need 5 cards in the drop area. So with that being said, with the ease of availability of cards not only reaching the drop area but being further utilized before hitting the drop area, it kind of just all flows well together to make these cards simple and easy to play. But now this brings up an interesting point. Like here earlier when we were talking about how Vegeta combos in the Champa, it makes a very strong double strike discard to the grave play. Now, how viable will those plays be if you turn into a format where feeding cards to your opponent's discard pile could potentially further stronger than normal plays? Does that still seem viable? Like, could you still assume that if I critted you every turn for the next couple of turns while you continue to feed Majin Boos and Bulmas and little things like that to your discard pile, that I couldn't see a play that's potentially more powerful than it should be too early in the game? Like, I don't know about you, but if I see a 1 energy come into play and he's a 20k double strike, I don't really care what he does. I just don't think he should cost 1 mana. And if you double strike crit me from 8 to 6, I'm going to feel pretty good about the fact that you turned what could have been a 3 or 4 drop play into a 1 mana for me, probably by my next turn. So, Trini, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's going to require a lot of playtesting with those colorless cards. It's going to be an interesting mechanic for Vegeta players. It's going to require a different strategy, but then again, even with that, most Vegeta decks have ways to circumvent that. What else does he do besides the double strike?
No, that's it.
Well, as far as I know, when you summon him using his Overwhelm ability, and I think that's going to be popular on these cards, that they have an ability from Overwhelm. Bardock, I believe he says he chooses any number of your opponent's non-blockers that equal up to 5 or less, and he warps them out of play. So think of it as like KO, except worse. It doesn't cost you anything to use it except to summon him for 1 instead of 5. And then he puts them in the warp. So as far as we know, warp is a form of remove from play. And until we see a direct interaction with the warp zone, we're going to consider that automatically to be the worst thing that could have just happened to your card. So he's going to warp out a total interest cost of 5 off the board.
Well, with that, even for, let's say that happens as soon as turn 3, I don't foresee it being too bad, because especially if it's like mono blue Vegeta, it can pretty much hold its own even if that does happen. So I don't really see this being game breaking if they get sent to warp, seeing as we've been dealing with cards like Kale and Promo Gohan and everything else, KOing cards and sell eating cards and send them to the KO. Or maybe like a banish zone, but I don't see it as a problem. It's just something that we're just gonna have to work around when we get to that type of format, but we're not there yet. So I'm not gonna count my chickens before they hatch, so to speak. What do you think, Corey?
I mean, honestly, I'm not excited about this at all. It doesn't seem like it's going to impact anything all that much to me. Because if you really want to get down to it, yeah, sure, you can get credit and be down 2. But then you still have to come up with the other 3 cards without having to neg your hand too hard to do it. And then you're going to neg yourself when you actually play him and pay that 1 mana. He's strong, but it's one of those things where I don't think it's going to have any sort of real significant impact yet, at least not just from him.
I do say, believe one good thing is that what I feel a lot of players will do is that they will splash him in to every deck as a alternative win condition.
I definitely can see where Cherry was going with that. That was a point that I also was concerned about. He does not actually have any specific cost. So if you wanted to, though he counts himself as colorless in the energy zone, he doesn't require any commitment to any particular thing. You just gotta get the overwhelm cost, even if you didn't want to use the overwhelm cost. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's pointless to summon this card without the overwhelm. But even if you decided that you wanted to just have him in there just as a 1 mana board wipe, he's just a 1 mana board wipe. And with the exception of a few, and I do emphasize a few very unique selection of cards, nothing really interacts with your discard pile enough that banishing 5 chosen cards from your discard pile is going to harm you in exchange for what you gain from this card being put into play. Now, of course, until the 12th of January, this is the only card that we really know. They're very limited in the information they give us. Of course, we do see the other time patrols for those who play Dragon Ball Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2. We do see some of the other time patrols like the Trunks, Toa, and Mira, who, in my particular, I'm very interested to see the Toa. Don't judge me, okay? I think Toa's a very beautiful little evil creature thing. So I'm very interested in seeing where this design goes, but overall, just the fact that they're colorless intrigues me, because just as much as maybe it could be a very small impact on the format, or maybe it could be a very large impact on the format, what we do know, what I think we can all agree on, is everybody's going to try it. Like there's no reason not to make the room in your deck to see if it is a good fit, because it doesn't cost anything but what it costs. So everybody will at least give it a shot before they write it off, and that, I think, will give it a good space for playability. I think that that's going to give it enough room for it to be worth picking up, and I think that it should be something that every player should be considering investing even just a small amount of resources into acquiring, just for the simple sake of having them, to give it a shot.
Kind of reminds me of how when we played Naruto, there were void cost cards.
Exactly. And I mean, we've seen Bandai do colors before in the form of void. And void never got splashed nowhere, for real, at the end of the day.
Cool.
And I think it's even less likely to work out this time around, because before a lot of things had very little specific costs. There were certain things that cost specifics, but even the most expensive things typically cost a couple of specifics and then randoms. This game, everything has a specific cost for the most part. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I feel like it's probably going to teeter right around the same place that Void was, because the fact that it can be put anywhere means that to balance it, they have to make it a little more difficult to play in certain ways. That's the only way to balance a card that you can literally see anywhere. It's why Cold Bloodlust has its requirement, even though it
has no requirement.
Terrible requirement.
It has no requirement enough.
Well, I think that's definitely a good point to hit on. If it is colorless, like all of these cards are colorless, I feel like I gotta be careful with that. I was gonna say I feel like I trust Bandai excuse me. I feel like even Bandai could not make these cards too powerful and then give them to everybody. I feel like even Bandai could see that coming. Like, I don't know, guys. I don't hate them. Really, I truly, I love the way that they make some of these cards, but we've been running with Bandai for a long time.
It's limited.
Every time I give them the benefit of the doubt, I say they're not gonna break the game. They break the game, and then I go and I say, okay, well that's fine, right? So because they could just do this, or they could just do that, or maybe it just won't be that bad. And it's always what I don't. It's always what I don't think it is. I mean, it's always what I don't think it is. And so I gotta look at them, and I just gotta be like, okay, well, we can hope and pray. And from the looks of it, I feel like they're already going in that direction. But this is one out of like 7. So we can hope and pray. In the meantime, though, the last point I definitely want to touch on with these cards is this new keyword. Not overwhelm. I mean, yes, that's a new keyword. Technically, it isn't. But this new little domain, warp. Do you feel as though they will allow this to be a new, more interesting mechanic for interactive gameplay? Like, do you think, similar to how Yu-Gi-Oh! Uses its remove from play zone, there are certain decks and certain cards that really interact with that zone, even though it's an out of play zone? Do you think Bandai will allow the warp to function the similar way?
I doubt it.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I doubt it. They haven't even let us touch the discard pile yet. They created field cards and have barely gave us anything to do with those. It really, even at this point, they're underutilizing so many functions and parts of this game that I don't know if they're going to introduce a mechanic and really support it from that point.
Well, I think from set 1, when we had Broly and they first introduced the field spell card, and then now in set 2, majority of the new leaders have a field spell of some sort, particularly like Cooler and Bobbity and stuff like that. I feel that it's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can instantly pop it. It's more so you use their effects to their entirety and then you're done with it because it's there to lead up to your high drops or a drop that goes into a specific combo outside of the set 1 Broly, which is just there for basically aesthetic, and then you have no cards that you have to pop and get rid of and play it again. But I feel with this warp zone, I feel like they're kind of going to treat it like the pendulum area in Yu-Gi-Oh! Not exactly like the pendulum area, but it's going to be something where you will be able to utilize that with specific cards that may be with their effects that may be hinted on the 12th. So I guess that's just something we'll have to.
I mean, that's clearly the theme of the ones that they're making. I just feel like very much so it's one of those things that they'll probably do one set and then kind of abandon over.
Can I cut in for a second? Completely off topic, fellas, but can we just stop and know for a second now that we mentioned field zones? Are any of these field cards actual fields? I have a ball, an event in time. The cell's birth is an event in time. A Big Getty Star, which as far as I know is the closest to a location any of these field zones have, and a ring, an object that's not even a ring, by the way. It's on Broly's forehead. And it's called a ring. And these are their chosen field cards. Are these actual fields? Like, can I fight a battle on top of Broly's ring?
No.
I mean, should I be fighting on top of Majin Buu's ball?
Probably not.
Is that?
But you could do it.
Can I fight on top of an event in time like Cell's birth? Can I? Like,
I mean, you can. Trunks establishing.
Can I stage a battle zone on Cell's birth, like on the event itself? That's crazy. All right, so I'm back. I'm off. I'm back on topic. You were saying.
What was I saying?
Yeah, right. How about that? So, fellas, so I guess that'll just about do it for this podcast. We are now reaching our 40-minute minimum. Sorry that we dragged that out so long, but there's a lot of information. Long story short, this is pretty much a healthy format that we're in. Minus Mecha Frieza and Cell and Vegeta.
As long as Bloodlust exists, I won't believe
it. Cold. Yeah, I mean, definitely we have some cards that we should have probably looked at a few times. I'm not sure if Bandai does enough testing before they drop some of these cards, but that's just, like I said, it's just me. Overall,
These
I
rules,
think
man.
that the regionals have been doing a great job promoting the competitive environment. I look forward to seeing what Bandai does with the information. Hopefully, they get off of this whole "we're children and we don't need cash prizes" thing. I don't think they will ever in life, but we really don't know them, so we can expect nothing but what we see. And we got some high expectations for this game to continue to grow, for this community to continue to grow, for these players to continue to evolve with these resources that Bandai is giving them. I hope to see better players everywhere I go. Players just evolving at every step of the way. I really enjoy playing the game, and yeah, we're gonna keep busting out some content to keep players moving forward. That's what we're all about here, and yeah, we hope to see y'all at these large events. We hope to hear from y'all and see what y'all think of the game, to see what you think of what we think. We're open to all types of interpretations. We're open to questions and comments. So give us a shout, and we'll be listening out. Thanks for tuning in.
Peace.
Deuces.